So what I realized that a lot of people don't listen to classical music because they don't know how to listen to it or what they're hearing. It's almost like listening to someone speak French when you don't speak French. You kind of zone out after a while. So by doing this, I'm hoping to explain a little bit about each piece that I'm going to play so that you understand the language and you're able to follow along throughout the whole piece instead of zoning out. I think that's what's so profound about classical music and why it moves me more than it does, say, pop music. And it starts here and it ends here, whereas pop music does this. It's the hamster wheel over and over and over again. And you get stuck into an emotion and that's it. Whereas classical music, you start here and you might remember it, but it's not as emotional and you move through all these different feelings and a story and it brings you to the other end if you follow along. And if you follow along, you're also in the present moment, and you have to do that with classical music. You can't get stuck here. You have to move with it. And by doing that, by being in the present moment, that's where we encounter God. So it's really amazing how you don't have to understand classical music. You don't even have to know God or who He is or have a relationship with Him in order to encounter Him through beauty.
Take this waltz as an example. One way of entering into a piece is knowing something about the composer.
So this piece is written by Dmitri Shostakovich. He lived during World War I and World War II. At this time, it was very dangerous to be a composer who tried to express himself because composers were about freedom and Stalin wasn't. So there was times that he was threatened to be thrown into prison. He suffered a lot under Stalin, and because he lived during this time, he kind of had to mask what was going on in the music. And he'll have these beautiful lines, and then there's always something a little bit grotesque about it, a little bit off and jarring. And that was his way of showing that on the outside, communism is great, but we're rotting on the inside. The way I imagine it is because, all right, he lived in the early 1900s. Anybody ever read Anna Karenina? So you have Anna, this beautiful woman who's married, and she walks into this hall, which is just absolutely massive, and there are soldiers that came back, and they're all dancing with these women in these beautiful gowns. The man that's in love with her, he's a soldier, and he walks into the room, and he looks across the hall, and he sees Anna, and this is the only way that he can have time with her because she's a married woman. And then there's this moment in the middle where it kind of, you can imagine that he's just imagining being with her and like, what if I could take her away? What if we could, there's a circus happening right down the road. What if we went to the circus? And they're walking around and there's the Ferris wheel and that's kind of that grotesqueness that comes in. And then suddenly, abruptly, it stops and we're brought back into the room where the waltz is happening. And at first I was like, oh, and it's so tragic because they don't end up dancing together. And so then I started listening to the second half when the music comes back again and you hear the theme of the waltz. And I realized, I'm like, oh my gosh, they do end up dancing together. Because in the beginning, I played it by myself, the melody, and then the second time when I come through, the piano plays it with me. So we have both of us playing bits and pieces of the melody together.